Hello and a very warm welcome to you all. My name is Mark Morley and this is the IT Business Partner Playbook, a new series where I'll be joined every week by business relationship managers and business partners from around the globe. Each week we'll dive into conversations that matter, from navigating complex relationships to personal growth and leadership, and hopefully everything in between. No scripts, just honest talk from the front lines. Before we meet today's guest, I just wanted to ask you again for two little favors. The first is, if you have any comments or feedback on the podcast, please do share it either with me directly or in the comments wherever you're watching or listening to this. While the series is unplanned, knowing what's important to you does help me provide some direction to our guests. So if you do want me to tackle an issue or explore an opportunity, then please let me know. And secondly, if you are getting value from these episodes, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and give a thumbs up. This will help us reach a wider audience and therefore help more people. So thanks so much for your support. So on to today, and I'm delighted to be joined by Michelle Momberg, a BRM based here in South Africa. Michelle first became a BRM back in 2017. So I'm really looking forward to hearing the insights and experiences that she's gained during that time. So good morning to you, Michelle. Thanks so much for joining us. Can I hand over to you for a quick intro before we dive into your views on this often misunderstood capability?
Yes, hi. Hello, Mark. So nice to see you again. And thank you for the invitation to be here today. It's really exciting and I've been really looking forward to sharing this time with you. As you mentioned, I live in South Africa and I'm very fortunate to live in the beautiful city of Cape Town, the loveliest city of our country.
Absolutely.
So I've very happily been living here for the last 5 years, moved down just sort of in the middle of COVID. Which was a very difficult time for all of us. And yes, as you've said, I was a BRM. Well, the first time I was put into a BRM role was in 2017. And it was together within a environment BRM team put together in a large retail fashion retailer in South Africa, the largest at that stage. And a very new role, we were all brought into the team, a new BRM function, and said, right, we want you guys to look after our demand planning. We want to understand what the various fashion chains need, and we want you to help us. And we really had to develop all the processes, templates, and understand the business and get to understand retail. And none of us really came from retail at that point. Prior to that, most of us in that team had pure IT functions, and myself too. So I'll jump back a little bit and then into the BRM function. I've been in IT for 29 years, a lifetime, but it's been awesome. I did a BCom law degree, didn't go into law, went into business and ended up in IT and specifically SAP, ERP environments. And I think that has led a lot to allowing the capability for the BRM environment is to understand enterprise resource planning and enterprise environment in terms of IT, all the different business functions, the processes, trying to understand efficiencies and really trying to understand what each of the different business processes need to be able to function effectively.
Right.
So I was in SAP for very long, in IT, and then jumped into content management and information management. And again, very important element, understanding the inputs and the outputs of business processes and how to be more efficient and effective in that. And again, that relates to the BRM role. So roundabout in IT, and really my functions as BRM have been as a business partner in IT, whether it was in the fashion retailer or where I am now. Also a BRM role. So although I was in a BRM role in 2017 with COVID and the changes that we all went through, that retailer unfortunately didn't make it, disbanded the IT team, and I went back into pure IT consulting and sales and business development really. And then lucky enough to be back in BRM for the last 7 months only. So it's a new role that I'm in now. So really a sort of whirlwind tour, but always involved in IT and always involved in business analysis, business understanding, business processes, and trying to make it more effective.
Right.
Yeah.
How did you find, because we've had some guests that have been in the FMCG field, and they said that actually BRM, for some reason, just works really well in that industry. Was that your experience while you were there?
So, Mark, I agree. I think it's I wouldn't say easier area to sort of understand the role of BRM. However, the role that I was in was a new role as well. So it was a little difficult in the organization. So what are you going to do? And, what are you about? And are you just another person in the way of me getting things done from an IT point of view? But the role lent more to the industry. Where I am now, which is in Dentons, and Dentons is a global law firm. International law firm, one of the biggest that there is internationally, and my role is the first in the organization. It's a brand new role, and it's been challenging to sort of find how the BRM role fits in this organization. So the demand planning around understanding what the business needs and prioritizing it, executing it, and then doing the value analysis at the end, they are incredibly good at the execution part. But the intake and the management is what they've asked me to look at. So the sort of complete function, looking at demand and then the analysis at the end, and working very closely with the execution and services teams. So I'm almost finding an easier fit now, Mark, than it was in the very set business area of that old-fashioned retailer that we were trying to then sort of transition and modernize. Yeah.
Actually, I've got many contacts, mostly in the UK, that work for law firms. So it's interesting that BRM seems to be a capability that law firms are really noticing the benefit of. When you said that the role was new when you moved into it, how did you, as a person or as a team, kind of find your fit? Figure out what it was that the business and IT required from you, and how to deliver on that.
Yeah, that's been quite a journey. As I've said, it's only 7 months in, and being a brand new role, it was first of all education. What is a BRM, and what can they expect from me, and what do I expect from them to make this role work and function within the IT, which we call GBT, Global Business Tech, within the GBT team. But it's been really it's been an awesome journey so far, Mark, and no regrets at all moving into the role. It's been interesting to understand their current processes and business focus. It's a very complex organization. As I've said, 160 offices, 82 countries, huge organization with lots of different processes and complexities, lots of cross-regional work going on, and really a need to look at being efficient without impacting client service. So my BRM role has been very interesting. What we decided as a GBT team and as the leadership team in GBT, I report into the senior manager looking after technology programs. That's where they've slotted the BRM role into, and she reports into the CIO. So working very closely at that level, what we decided as a kickoff to sort of embed the role and find some quick wins, hopefully, is for me to work only with the global functions initially and not really move into all of those other regional areas. It's just too big. And just work with the global functions and the chiefs, the execs sitting at the top in those global functions. And by that, I mean finance, communications, brand, those types of functional areas, and work with them and see, what can we do for you? What can we enable you to do better? Where are pain points? Why can't you be effective? And how can we help? And that's really how we started.
Okay. Wow. And was there any, with it being a new function, was there any kind of kickoff or promotion of this new role and how it was going to help the business, from the senior guys?
So what we did was we identified key stakeholders within these business functional areas, and then we had sessions with them directly, sort of one-on-one sessions with the CIO in attendance sometimes, mainly just the senior leaders, and to say, this is Michelle, this is the BRM role, this is where we see this connecting role sit. And she's not going to take your sort of service requests. This is not the role. The role is for you to talk to Michelle, let Michelle listen and understand your business objectives, where you need to go. And then let's see if there are things that we have in our arsenal that we're not using or that you're not using that you can be more effective with. It was really a one-on-one at the top sort of chief level, and then based on what the discussions we had there with their teams. So as the role is developed, so I've been introduced to a larger group, and it's not really only global at the moment, and we are digging into a few of the regions now as some of those requirements come out. But I think that approach was fairly effective because we had a few quick wins already.
Okay, great.
Where we've just said, oh, we've got this, let's teach you how to use this. And they said, oh, thank you. So it's really been quite effective so far, but a big journey ahead because it's a large organization with one BRM.
Yeah. I think this is one of the things that strikes me with BRMs is that they have, their job is to stand back and look at what's going on, look at capabilities and how they can be matched, look at needs and how they can be matched to capabilities. So one of the things is that BRMs don't necessarily have deliverables. So that kind of means, people might question what it is you're doing. But then the fact that you can stand back and look at what other people are doing and then how you can connect these things, that's where the real value is. So it sounds like you're already, people are already recognizing this, which is wonderful.
So one of the things that I've found in this process is if you don't document something, it doesn't get done. So although we don't have a deliverables as such, I have tried to work very hard at listening and understanding and then documenting it so that the chiefs can have a look and say, yeah, that is actually how we work. A lot of the times they might not have a process description of their current process. So it's a little bit of analysis, not quite business analysis because I'm not a BA, but just understanding what they want to achieve and then documenting it down and saying, is this what you want to do? And a lot of the times they say, oh, let's work on that. And then from there, developing a plan, a short-term and a longer-term plan of how we can get to where they need to be. So not pure deliverables, but also they are. I've dug back into my BRM Institute notes when I did my certification and pulled out a lot of that stakeholder maps, all of those types of things, and used those as some of the education tools to drive the team along in the process. Yeah.
It's great that you're doing that because one of the things that I've found, and we had an episode about this. So James Robotham talked about how his department was kind of all retrenched, and so he's looking for a role now, and he's talking about the struggles with that. But I think one of the problems with BRMs is that it's, even though they're adding a lot of value, it can be difficult to see that value because you're helping other people achieve targets rather than having your own. So the more that you can document what you're doing, and even though it might seem a bit of a drag that you have to create the reports and stuff, I think the more that you can kind of show people what you're doing, it then really makes it crystal clear in everyone's mind in the organization what you're doing and how valuable you are. So when those tough decisions come, if there is a restructure, people can look at your role and say, well, actually, this is here on paper, this is what they're doing, we can't live without this. Because I think in the other organizations where that isn't being done, where people are still adding value, but it's just not shown, I think that's where people struggle. So I think what you do now is great. And I think it helps solidify the role, it helps make the BRM, more of a pillar. We project managers and architects and all these other older roles that are well established. I think doing this, creating this documentation helps establish BRM as a role, and one that can't just be kind of swept over if there's a restructure. So I think it's great that you're doing that.
Very important, Mark. And in my previous BRM role, we focused a lot on the value contribution that the BRMs are bringing. So what processes are you working on? Which business objectives are you trying to achieve? And what happens to that? How quickly can we be effective and move that through the process? It was a big driver in the previous BRM role. There's not such a big driver now. The driver now is sort of bringing the units all together. So there is a little bit of a relationship building that's needed between GBT and all of these regions.
Right.
And what I've done is I've developed a little dashboard to say, this is the opportunity. We call it an opportunity assessment. We don't like the word demand. So it's an opportunity assessment, and we bring it into the dashboard. Who's it affecting? Which entities are impacted? What areas of IT are impacted? And how is it moving through the process? And then monthly, I draw reports out of that and say, this is what I've been working on. It started off in September with 1, and now we're sitting at 27. I think we've got opportunities that are out there where I believe GBT as a team can assist. And then we track and I monitor it. What moves into discovery, what moves into delivery, and what moves into completed. And in that way, you actually have tangible evidence of the impact that your role has had in the different business units.
Yeah. I also think this kind of oversight is something that's missing in so many organizations. So if the BRMs are not there, no one else is doing it. So you have projects that are being monitored, so everyone knows what projects are going on. There's no high-level view. There's no kind of portfolio or investment review of these things going on. So I think this is another way where BRMs are adding such value, that they are monitoring everything that's going on. And then you can guide, we shouldn't be doing this because we're doing this. And so I think this is something else. And it's great that you've got dashboards to this because it just makes it much easier for executive leaders to manage what's going on.
And often what we work on might not become a formal project with a big budget and a big impact, but it's smaller task-related activities that we might be working on that an entity need assistance with and didn't know who to ask and didn't know how to facilitate it. And by connecting the people, which is what we do, and understanding the problem, we can say, right, you do that for that person, and the person's, my life is just easier. I can now move to the next inefficiency that there might be. And it's a small little task that has a fairly big impact. And those are the types of things that I think are important to track, because those are the things that make small little incremental impacts, and then a bigger to say, the GBT team are awesome. They helped me so this year because I'm more efficient. And that's in the dashboard. So it's important. Yeah.
I think when you mentioned about the relationship building, I think one thing that separates business partners, IT business partners or BRMs, from the HR and the finance business partners, and I think it was 𝑷𝒂𝒓𝒕𝒏𝒆𝒓 that mentioned this, is that you're building relationships, but it's not just your own. So in HR and finance, you'll kind of have a one-to-one relationship with someone, and that's all you focus on, and that's you build on that. But with business partners in IT, you're building other people's relationships. So if you can, you're talking to someone, you can understand their need, the team that can fulfill it, but then you can build their relationship and then just stand back and say, look, you guys, you know what to expect from each other now. I've helped you understand your own needs and capabilities. So I think that's what's really nice about the BRMs and IT business partners, is that you're not just building your own relationships, you're also nurturing other people's as well.
Yeah, they call me the connector, and I know that comes out of the BRM training. And there was the orchestrator and the connector and all of those terms, and what the connector is almost what's stuck. So my role is really that. What do you need? Who can do it? Let's put the two together, and they run with it after that. And I think that's important because there's just so much going on. You can't stay involved in everything. And just had a little touch point to say, how's it going? Did you achieve what we wanted to achieve? Did this achieve your objective? Great. What next? And then that relationship is always there. It's built between those two people. And often in large organizations like ours, there's just not the knowledge of who's doing what, who has the skill set and capability to assist. And that's really a big function of my within Dentons. Yeah.
How many people are in your team? In the BRM team?
In the BRM team, me.
Right, okay.
One BRM. When I was interviewed for the position, there was the mention to say, well, maybe this team will grow. We're doing sort of a toe dip to see if this is a function that we believe would be that we could grow in terms of the business. But at the moment, it's just me. But I form part of a technology programs team, which is the PMO and the program managers, the project managers, and all that execute on the bigger projects. We work together, and very importantly so, the intake, the actual project, the execution, and all that is very close. So I'm part of that team. The GBT team is growing and growing and growing all the time. And it's actually a smallish team technology for such a large organization. And it's purposefully like that, the way the organization works. It's a polycentric organization. The regions are fairly autonomous, but there are certain global initiatives and activities that sort of bring about the brand and the brand's importance. And that's how it works. So small team, very small team, just me, and sort of trying to wangle my way or push my way into all of the very relevant areas where I believe a role like mine could have an impact. So that's really where I've tried to be doing the last 7 months. It's been great fun. I've loved it.
But I think, I mean, this is the way I saw BRM kind of evolving to in the end, because there's always so much focus on the role of BRM, but not the capability. And we see that BRM should be an organizational capability. So everyone in the company should have these BRM practices that they practice. So having one person or maybe a small team as champions that know what BRMs should be doing and then can filter that out, build the cross-functional relationships, tell people. So I see, you know, BRM, the strength of BRM isn't in the number of people. I think it's in, you know, in the organizational capability.
Absolutely.
And we have spoken, I mean, Jag from NFU in the UK, a huge team. So it's not to say that big teams don't work, because what they're doing there is fantastic. But I also think that BRM teams can be small, even individual, as in your case, as long as you're sharing what you're doing with the people you're working, so that they can then assume or take on these skill sets and these practices, so that it does become part of the company culture.
I do think in terms of what I'm seeing out there, there is capacity for additional assistance in this area. My concern is I'm not getting to all the touch points I should be getting, and that there are potential opportunities that we're missing that could have a big impact on the firm as a whole. So I think one body is probably too little. But I listened to the Jag, podcast, and I was impressed with the size of their team, and I thought that must be fantastic, because they could really zone in on various areas and really use their skill set to be able to enhance that business. In my previous BRM role, there were 6 of us, one for sort of each of the chains. And that also made sense, because you were focused on a specific delivery entity, and you could ensure that all your research and whatever you had to do focused on that delivery and their objective. And the BRMs almost became a little competition amongst each other to see whose project was going to get sort of priority. And that it was a I think it depends, and it'll be interesting to see how Dentons grows, and potentially the opportunity to consider other big BRMs maybe in the future.
I mean, the other benefit from having more BRMs is that you can learn from each other, and we've seen that particularly in these FMCG chains where they do have a BRM per vertical, and you'll have some of them that are very successful and others that are less so. And sometimes it's just because of the people they're working with, they're particularly helpful. But other times it's because they're doing things slightly different, so they can learn from the colleagues that are, making good inroads. So that's the benefit, I guess, of having a bigger team.
Yeah.
What does a typical day look like for you?
So it was a very different environment to move into Dentons. It's a totally global entity, and we work totally from home. There is no HQ office for the global team.
Okay.
Not at all anywhere. So all of the members of the global team are throughout the world. And so I work 100% from home. And initially it was really challenging, because, and although we had COVID and we went through all of that, when we all started going back to the office, even though it was maybe 2 or 3 times a week, that connection and that one-on-one connection with your teammates is so important. So it was really quite challenging. But now I wouldn't change it for the world. I have the best job, Mark. So because of our time zone, which is really different, being in South Africa, sort of at the bottom end of the world, most of the people that I work with are in Europe, in America, in Canada, some in Australia. So we're in very different time zones. And that means I wake up, I have a morning to sort of get myself ready for the day, or to focus on what happened the night before. Yeah. And nobody really bothers you too much. So you can really get a lot more done than I used to in my previous role, because it was meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. And then, we didn't get much done because you had a task after every meeting. Now, but the morning I can really sort it out, and then my meetings start. They do that sometimes late into the evening because of the time zone challenges that we have. But you got to make yourself available, especially when you're meeting with the execs. They don't have a lot of time in their diary, and you need their time and their ears. So if there's a 10 o'clock meeting at night, so be it. Yeah. So my day is really a lone day. But really quite still very busy. And I must say the team works hard at communicating. So every meeting is started with, how are you? Which you don't normally get in a lot of normal teams meetings when you sort of jump into your meeting. You have some people. And then we have a hangout session once a month where we just get together from all around the world and you just talk. There's no agenda. You just talk about where you are. Can you show me what you look like? What is your garden? Oh, you've got a pet. What's your pet's name? How's your kid? What are you doing this afternoon? And that type of thing. So we work hard at the people side of the position because we're so spread out. But what a lovely opportunity to work with all of the people around the world, all their different cultures and the nuances that they are going through where they might be living, whether it's in Poland or Ukraine even.
Yeah.
So I have a really interesting
that's cool.
daytime. Yes.
I think that's one of the during COVID, obviously people couldn't travel, and we end up doing some work with a big company where we were doing an engagement in 27 countries. So we had people on Zoom sessions where we're doing a BRM engagement with them. That kind of thing wouldn't have happened pre-COVID because people would want to get into a room with each other. You'd be flying all over the place. You'd probably be seeing a handful of people at a time. So there wouldn't be this group of people. So it was great because people were getting together and meeting each other, albeit online, for the first time, which was really interesting. So that was one of the things I guess we're thankful to COVID for, even though it was a terrible time, that it did kind of drop the barriers where people would just accept, okay, we can do this online. And it is in some cases far better. It's always nice to meet people face to face, and there's kind of interactions. You can gauge a lot more when you're in front of someone. But just having the ability to meet with people that you wouldn't have met with otherwise is really great with these online situations.
And the cameras help. So we do have a camera on policy, and that just getting just a little bit of a feel of the body language of someone is important, and we work hard at that. So even if it's a big team, just generally putting on the cameras and seeing how, what is your facial expression when someone is saying something is so important. So that I miss that, and I might have the opportunity to meet some of the team later this year.
Right.
Very looking forward to, because I think that's a very important part, is just to make that sort of physical connection as well. So it's still there. Mm-hmm.
So aside from the physical engagement, is there much of a difference? Have you had to adapt to a large extent from your previous role to your current role? Has there been much of a change?
I think it's a very different role now than what I was doing just before this role. So I was in sales, and it was this side of the fence. Really, it wasn't inside an organization. So I was doing consulting to clients,
right.
And it's similar but different. Similar in that you still got to listen to what they need and put something together and put a solution together and execute, and then make sure that they're happy afterwards. So very similar type of principles, but different. Being inside an organization and working hard on the strategy and the objectives of that organization. Where do we want to be in 5 years' time? Is a very different role, and I'm very fortunate in that I'm included in a lot of the strategic decisions, and I think that's a very important element of a BRM.
Yep.
My previous BRM role, we were not at that level. If you look at the maturity model, we were at the lower end, which was more of the order takers and sort of maybe level 2. Whereas this is a very different role. This is a much higher up the maturity level. Even though I'm the only BRM and they haven't had the function before, they understand the value of the role and of this type of role. And I think that's got a lot to do with our CIO, who has worked with BRMs before in his previous life. So he understands what a BRM can bring to an organization, and the role has been pitched at that level. And it's just much easier, Mark, if you at that level than it was at the previous level. So it's quite nice to be able to compare the differences. Yeah.
Where is your CIO based?
He lives in DC, but he's everywhere. So every now and again you hear he's there and he's visiting there and he's visiting there. So he does a lot of traveling to the various areas, but he's based in Washington, DC.
Okay. So I know the BRM is a lot more prominent in the US, so I was wondering whether he would be better.
Yes.
But it is growing. I mean, we're involved in training, as you know, so a lot of we see most training going on in the US, but it is slowly gathering pace outside of the US, which is good. But we do deal with some big organizations that are outside of the US that are, you know, really embracing BRM. So that is good to see. But it's definitely, even though BRM has been around for a long time, it's definitely considered, I guess, a newer role, and it's definitely less understood. I mean, we only have to look at job specs. There's a number of BRMs I'm connected to that are looking for roles, so I always keep my eye out for jobs that are coming up. But so many of them are tactical roles, very operational, and there's always has to be an element of both. You have to kind of appreciate that might happen, but you can just see that a lot of organizations just don't understand BRM or business partnering, which is a real shame, because there's so much value to be gained from this capability.
Yeah, and you know, in 2018 or 2017, when I started in the role, that was even way back then, and it was difficult to understand what is this role about? What do you want us to do, and to get into it. And then after doing the certification and the training, we really had to work quite hard in the entity to try and not force, but work with them to get the role into recognized as it should be. And now, being a little bit later, and as you say, maybe because it's out of the US, being in the organization I am in now, there's definitely a different approach, and it is really it's a lovely position to be in, because I can make a difference, and we've already seen a few wins. So I'm fortunate in that I have the backing of the executive management team. That are saying, go out there and let's do this, and let's make a difference within our firm. So
I think that's so critical that you do have that support from the executive, because that's where we see it going wrong. I mean, if I was to look at the one thing that can break BRM, it's executive sponsorship. And it's a shame, because I mean, we've had in our training classes where people have come on, learn about, you know, the BRM Institute's kind of view on BRM. There's light bulbs flashing, like, this is wonderful, great, we're going to go back to the office and do this. And then you catch up with them 3 months later and they're like, well, we can't. It's not what the business wanted, not what the executives want. There's no backing there, so it's impossible for them. You can give them all the tools and practices in the world, but they just can't use them. So I think executive sponsorship is so important. But I guess you just have to be lucky. You can try and sell the benefits to the executive so they can help share it out. But I think sometimes they either understand or they don't, and they either want to understand or they won't.
I believe it. Yeah, it's difficult. Yeah. And I'm very fortunate. I have a lot of support from the top executives. So it makes my life easier.
Yeah. No, definitely. I'd say it's and this is one of the things that we've seen where, I mean, your CIO now understood BRM, and that's why he brought you in, because he saw the benefit of it. But we've seen so often where the CIO gets swapped out and then the BRM team go with them because the incoming people don't understand BRM. And because they haven't gone to lengths to kind of explain or document or demonstrate or expose themselves, it's much easier for them to be swept aside, which is really unfortunate.
Exactly what happened with us. So in my previous engagement, when the fashion retailer was disbanded and we were bought out, really, and it was the group was split up and they were bought out. The role, the new owners just said, oh, they don't need BRMs, and all of us then had to go on our merry way and find alternative places of employment because the value wasn't understood. It's exactly what happened. So a lot of it depends on the buy-in from top levels and the executives.
Shame. I knew some of your colleagues back then. It was a really, really difficult time. So it's a shame.
Horrible. It was a horrible time, but we made it. And of course, it was in the middle of COVID, which is, of course, was a big challenge. Now everybody's sort of in employment, and it was really a challenging time.
No, it was tough. Have you found, because I met you at the BRM Connect event here in Cape Town, a wonderful vineyard, which is run by Baz and the Institute, so that was fantastic. So I know that you do attend these things. Do you deal much with the community? Do you have other BRMs in other companies that you kind of bounce ideas off?
Mark, and it's really after the event in January, I was one of the things that I put down to do, and I unfortunately haven't got to it, but I really want to do that because the event was I enjoyed it so much, and being able to connect with people and understand that there's other people out there with the same pains and that are going through the same things you're going through was wonderful. And I went into, and I sort of, those are the communities I want to join, and I sort of logged and I started getting a whole lot of webinars and prompts from them. Life has just been a little crazy at the moment in this role. It's really ramping up like this now, Mark. A few months were quiet as people were sort of sussing me out and wondering up to, and now it's like really hectic, but it's really on my list. It's a very important, I think, something we all should do. All the BRM should definitely connect, because it can be quite lonely and difficult, and just to have someone to talk to and say, have you experienced this? I must say the BRM Institute's website and content has helped me a lot. So going back into it and saying, I just need to understand, what is the stakeholder map then? How does it look? What is the analysis? What is my relationship on a page supposed to look like again? I know I'm supposed to have one. What am I supposed to do? And then just being able to get that info so easily, and just, and just attend the webinars and listen and understand that all the other people are having the same page. It's just been wonderful. So I'm really appreciative of what they do for us.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, going from where you were before in the previous BRM role to now must be a massive culture shock. I mean, I spoke to someone that worked for a law firm in the UK, and they were saying what was crazy is because your end customers are the lawyers. Everything's billable hours, so they don't have time to talk to you.
No,
because they can't charge for it, so they don't want to. So having that kind of obstacle where they've never experienced that in any other BRM role, so coming into this law firm is very different. So I think for you, being able to speak to other BRMs in other law firms that are having similar challenges it would be really useful. So I hope, I'll certainly connect you with the ones that I know, because
that'll be fantastic. Thanks, Mark. That'll be really awesome. I think a little bit that makes it maybe a little bit easier for me is the environment I came out of was on the consulting side, which is all around billable hours. Well, so understanding the business driver behind how important the time is, and don't mess with me. If I have a meeting, you better get to the point and make sure I understand what's in it for me.
Right.
Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to give you any time, because that is not my objective. And being able to understand that makes it a little bit easier, but it is a challenge. It is a big challenge. Because yes, our client is really the lawyer. The end client, which is the very important client that we have, is also part of our focus. But really, we are enabled through the lawyers, and it's difficult. Yeah, they have their time is money, literally.
And lots of it normally. Do you do much vendor management? Are you involved in that?
In the time that I've been here, not yet. But some of the initiatives that I have on my list that I see coming up, I think I'm going to definitely be a lot more involved in that. We have a whole IT commercial area who does a lot of the vendor negotiations and relationship management and all of that. But some of the initiatives we're looking at will be new technology that we'll need to bring into the department, and we will need to then engage with various vendors around it and maybe go through an RFP process and understand what their services and their offerings are, and then in that way. But the ultimate relationship around sort of the relationship that thereafter will be managed by the commercial services. So it would really be only at that level, and I see that potentially happening in the future.
Because that's one thing I've always found interesting, that there's always, or generally, an inward focused role. So it's all about your internal relationships. And yet with more and more services being delivered externally, to the point where I guess a lot of companies won't even have their own IT functions, everything will be outsourced. The ability for a BRM to manage those relationships, those external relationships, I think will become increasingly important.
Absolutely. With a focus on cloud and SaaS services, where a lot of it isn't in-house anymore, that relationship is vital because, I mean, they're running it for you, right? So it's very like an outsourced model. So, yeah, I agree. I think that whole ability to have that relationship, and it's really just another stakeholder that you're going to have to communicate with and make sure that you are frequently in contact with and that they deliver according to what you need. But I think from our point of view, there will be a distinct difference between the engagement around understanding a solution set for a problem that you might have identified versus the actual run or maintenance of the relationship afterwards will be, by the commercial guys. So, yeah.
I think that's the important thing because we've an event we've run years ago here in Cape Town, in Joburg. There was a vendor came along and they were a partner of the company that was hosting us. But they said that the relationship was so good between the company and this vendor that they were a strategic partner. So it wasn't just that the company needed a service and they were delivering it. They really understood the business. They understood what they could do. They understand what the business needed. So the relationship worked really well. And it wasn't, I mean, we see so often that you have these CLAs or SLAs where people use it as an excuse to beat people up. So you're not delivering on this, you're not delivering on this, we needed that. But it's not really a relationship then, it is a service agreement. Whereas we find it works so much better when it is a partnership where the external company know the strategic objectives of the company, know how they can help, support that. So I definitely think, exactly. Yeah. So I definitely think those external vendor relationships are going to be more and more important to manage.
Absolutely, definitely. They're going to be key because we're not going to be able to provide our service and our function effectively without that very key relationship working very well. Yeah. Very important. Yeah. We've got a lot of external vendors that are part of our offering.
Right.
Just because of the nature of the strategy and because we are so everywhere in the world and dispersed, to be able to provide it. Yeah.
Well, this is the thing that those relationships are so important because if that provider doesn't, if their service breaks, it has a huge impact on the business. So it's so important that those things are aligned.
And then everybody will say, "Oh, you're doing a bad job, GBT. Your tech doesn't work." So it's very important, and that relationship is key. And as you said, I think one of the most important elements is they must understand what our drivers and our business objectives are, so that they're constantly changing with us and evolving. Yeah. If we need to add new things, how's it going to impact with what we have, etc., etc. So it's vital, absolutely vital. Yeah.
Do you find since COVID that your business colleagues are more motivated to get involved with IT and are less kind of, because historically people have seen IT as a black box and it's like leave it to the IT guys, we don't really understand what they're doing. But now, especially with AI, everyone's kind of testing things and getting encouraged and excited about things. So you find that in the business that the business are really coming along with their own solutions or they're trying to push more?
There's varying elements. So you'll still get the people and the users that'll see us as, "Oh, my laptop doesn't want to work," or "I can't get connection to the network. Can you help me?" As sort of level of IT. And then you get the others that are really seeing the potential value of where our whole service is moving and the trends that we're finding. AI and what's happened in the last year and a half in relation to that has really opened the eyes and the minds of the people that we work with. And that's come around the whole data management of data and how we should be better at that, because if we measure that, if we manage that more effectively, we can do so much more. And I think that has really become the realization, especially within our industry, around, I think we should be managing it better. And then if we manage it better, the output, I can use it better, I can do so much better. That has definitely become a focus. And I think we are seen more as an enabler and an advisor and a supporter than just a pure cost center, which is always a problem. Like, are you delivering value because you cost so much money? Those talks are a little bit less. It's more around what can we do better together. So I'm very fortunate in the entity that I'm in. There is a professional or sort of a respect for what IT can deliver. Technology. Yeah.
I think it's even more comforting for me as an outsider when law firms, particularly, where you can imagine every penny is counted, everything must be, maximum value extracted all the time. If they can see the value in a BRM, then it must give other organizations comfort that this is definitely a valuable role. Otherwise, why would these guys be interested?
Yeah. No, I think this organization really has got aspirations to grow significantly over the next 5 years, and I think that's also a contribution to the role and bringing the role in to say is what can we do better.
Yeah.
And be more effective, and let's find someone that can focus on that. So I think it's also the aspirations of where the firm wants to grow, has also got a big contribution to that.
But it's wonderful that you've been in at the start of BRM and you can help grow the capability, and it's just it's nice that you're there to help create something that could be wonderful.
I'm very fortunate, yes, to be at.
She really been but hopefully that's where you can lean on the community more to make sure that whatever you're doing is kind of supported.
Right. If you could do that for me, Mark, that would be great. The context would be super.
When you moved into your first BRM role, did you know what you were getting into? Did you look for that role? Did you even know what BRM was at that point?
I was actually headhunted into that role, and the IT team at that stage, there was a lot of that entity had a big plan to be bigger and better than it was at that stage. Unfortunately, it didn't happen and it didn't work. But so they were bringing people from all over together into this big IT team and tackle this big project that was going to change the whole way the entity functioned. And I sort of got a phone call and said, "This is the role we have. How does it sound?" And I thought, well, too different to what I'm doing now. I might be on the sales side, but I'm still listening to complaints and finding solutions for them. That's what I'm doing. It's all about listening and understanding. So I thought, oh yeah, that sounds like fun. And so I didn't have an idea what a BRM was. I didn't have an idea because I was very focused into IT consulting and that environment. Felt very comfortable in the IT space, but didn't necessarily understand that sort of relationship management component and how structured it could be or should be. So it was great fun getting into that role, and I learned also a tremendous amount, and it was great working with a group of BRMs. And just as we said earlier, of course, all of those BRMs brought experiences from different various areas into the business, and then we developed together, and we developed the processes, and we developed how the demand is managed and how it's reviewed and prioritized, and how to sort of execute it. So that was great, and that knowledge I've now managed, luckily, fortunately, brought into my current role.
What characteristic or skill that you had at that point do you think has helped you the most to move into the BRM role?
I think it's very important to be able to empathize with people, Mark. Our role is it's very important to be able to put yourself into their position and to say, what is wrong? What do you need? Where are you? Why are you not able to be effective? And what is your objective? And why can you not get there? So I think that's a very important ability to have, is to be able to place yourself into their shoes and live their role with them, so that you can find the best solution. You've got to be quite tenacious. You've got to keep going at it, because it's not an easy role at all. And you've said it, people can try, but you really have to focus on the end objective and keep pushing everybody towards that. So you've got to be very tenacious, and you've got to really have the gusto to see it through. I can understand why you mentioned some people would be in tears, because if I can just compare, my previous role was a little that, where we really did battle, and we would have, I won't say robust discussions, but difficult discussions with key stakeholders and trying to assist when they didn't necessarily the value of the contribution. So you've just got to keep going at it, and it's very important, I believe, also to constantly look around and see what the trends are and what other people are doing. Specifically in the IT side, now I'm talking about in my specific field, and learn. Always keep on top of it and always learn, because in that way you can continue to stay relevant. So that's very important for me as well.
Yeah, that's good. A bit like when one of the previous episodes was with Roland Somerville in the US, and I said to him, what do you do when there's someone that you just can't deal with, when the challenge is too difficult to overcome and that relationship is not going to work? And he said, well, I've never had that. There's always, but he said, whenever you're talking to someone, there's always a way through. You can always, if you understand what people are going through, understand why they think the way they do, get to know them as people, there's always a way through. People aren't mean for the sake of it. Generally, people don't shout because they want to. People aren't angry all the time because they enjoy it. Generally, there's always a reason behind these things. And if you can really get to understand people, really get to know why it is they're feeling that way or thinking that way, there's always a way through. And that was really impressive listening to him say that. But it is true. I think as BRMs, you do have to. It's like marriage guidance counselors, or this really. This is, you have to be thick-skinned. But it is if you cannot take things personally, and if you can get to really know people, then there is always a way through. And this is something definitely people in other roles are not really going to be positioned.
They don't have to. Yeah, no, it's definitely that, and also I think if you believe that you're all working towards the same goal, and in Dentons, the culture is so one of commitment to the firm, right, and to the goal to succeed, then if you have a common goal, then it's almost easier to find a common area to talk to and find a solution. And often you just got to get to what that is for that person. In the end, everybody just wants to be success. And if you can assist and enable that, then you do generally get onto the same page at some point.
Yeah.
So there are difficult people, but
yeah,
I think if you just put yourself in their shoes, exactly what you're saying, then you can get there. You can find the solution.
Yeah. It's interesting what you're saying about understanding the company's purpose and direction, because when I worked for a company in the UK, and this is going back 20 years, they were really, we had this, the start of the new year, they were really on this. Like, we want everyone to understand our objectives. We want, if anyone outside the company asks you what are we doing and why, you need to be able to answer these questions. And at the time, a lot of us thought, well, this is just some new consultants come in with a new thing, and it's just all nonsense. As long as I know how to do my job, what does it matter? But it was so, and I didn't see it back then, but since then I've really understood, if the company does care about making sure its employees and its team know where the company's going and where they fit in, it makes everything just so much easier. And as you say, if you all understand that you're heading towards a common goal, then it might be that each of you got different approaches or a different understanding of that. But if you at least have a common belief, it's much easier to get where you're going.
Absolutely. And we've recently got a new CEO, and in the time that she's been with us 6 months now, she's held so many sessions with the firm. So there's sort of firm-wide calls at different time zones so that everybody can join, and it's really around where are we going and what are we going to do and where are we going to be in 5 years time and what is our objective. Very focused, and I feel very honored that I'm invited to these sessions and a part of this team, and we're all working towards the goal, because if it's not for us, who's going to do it? So it's exactly that. It's so important, and I really find that in Dentons, more than I've ever in any other firm I've been in, is really bringing everybody on board, working towards the same goal. And that also makes my life easier, because if we all know what the goal is, then when I'm talking to the various entities, it's a question of, we got to do this, so what do you need to be able to get there, and how can I help you? And then it's a much easier conversation because we're all going in the same direction. Yeah.
But it's also it's great for morale, it's great for motivation. I mean, you said there's sometimes you have to work at 10 o'clock at night, but it's not arduous for you, because it's part of what you need to do, and then you'll get something back as well. So it's not like you're being slave driven. You want to do it because you want to help the company get to where it's going.
Exactly, and it's a very organization focused on people and a lot on work-life balance. So it's like, can you make this meeting? Are you sure? Is it okay? Yes, I'm there. Don't stress. I'm fine. Yeah. And if you want to maybe take a little bit of time to do something, on your personal side, that's fine too. It's really a culture of cooperation, working together, respect, a lot of respect, and it's an awesome place to.
No, it sounds like it, and it's a shame actually, because these things that are so often seen as soft or fluffy things are really the hard, the core things. If you deal with those, if you deal with purpose and making sure people feel safe and wanted and motivated, the business just runs better. Everything's more efficient and more effective. So it's kind of curious that more businesses don't feel this way. I don't think this way, but it's great that yours does.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate.
I think we're kind of coming to the end of our time there. I don't want to carry on too long, but I always like to end with kind of your advice, things that you've picked up along the way, things that you might be able to share with people, things that you've learned, whether they're inside BRM or not. I mean, we've spoken to a number of BRMs where they do stuff outside of work, which is great. They work with charities or they're on councils, and it's all about engaging with people, interacting, and these are all things that are like life skills that you can then bring back into the business that help you do your job better. So is there anything that you've learned over the years that has really given you an ability that makes you a really great BRM?
Mark, I think what I've really learned is just to listen.
Right.
A lot of the times we talk and we don't, and you hear the old things, you with 2 ears and 1 mouth, you always hear it. But I think it's such a valuable concept to really internalize. It's so important to listen and really listen. And part of that is, as we've said before, is understanding why. Why is this person, saying that, and what do they really need, and getting behind that.
Yep.
But I think also importantly, dream big.
Right.
is important for me. I've got like a little piece of paper that I've got here stuck onto my monitor, and it says dream big and don't let assumptions stop you. So
Right.
often, especially in the BRM role, you'll get to talk to a stakeholder and they'll say, we want to do something fancy, and in the back of your mind you'll say, it's never going to work. We don't have the budget, we don't have the resources, I've seen the roadmap, we've got to wait 2 years, it's never going to work.
Yeah.
No, we're not going to do that. But rather take it, embrace it, and see if you can maybe do smaller, incremental little things to get there, rather than just ignore it. So dream big. Don't let assumptions stop you. And then something that I've heard very recently from our new CEO, it's also written here now that I saw it there, is focus on what you can control.
Right.
So very often we get overwhelmed by all of these maybe asks of us or where we might want to go. But if you can just focus on what you can control,
Yep.
you can make a difference. And then you can find the sweet spot so that you can grab that and do something with it and be more effective. So those are really the little pearls of wisdom that
They're really great.
remember and read every day. It just, I can dream big and then focus on what you can control.
Yeah. That's really good, actually. And I've been in so many meetings over the years where you can hear or you can see people are listening to respond, and it's so different to listening to understand. And it's like you can see people that just cannot wait for the breaking conversation so they can come back. Whereas if they just kind of let things sink in a little bit, then they might have a different answer. So listening to understand is definitely some great advice.
Important.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much, Michelle. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you. I'm so glad. Well, it's a shame we didn't get to spend more time together at the Connect event, but hopefully there'll be another one in the future. Hopefully at an equally amazing venue, because that was incredible.
Oh, it was lovely. It was lovely.
But yeah, it's been a real pleasure, and I'll definitely share with you my contacts in the legal fraternity, because I think that would help.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I look forward to publishing this episode. So I hope our listeners and viewers enjoy it, because I certainly have.
Thank you. I've also loved it, and thank you for the opportunity to spend some time with you, Mark. I really
A pleasure.
appreciate being asked. Yes.
Lovely. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you. Chat soon. Bye.
Bye bye.